The flower communion service, which we are about to share, and by the way, I should say that we're not going to eat anything here. Remember, there was a movie when I was a kid called Please Don't Eat the Daisies. Communion is not the same as sharing food. Communion simply means sharing. The elements of communion may vary widely, but the essence of communion is the sharing. So the flowers are the elements in this particular communion, which was created by Norbert Capek, shown on the screen here. He was the modern founder of the Unitarian Church in what was then Czechoslovakia. I think we can show the next slide. This was the situation in after the First World War. You see up in the upper left-hand corner where Prague is, in the region of Bohemia. This is where Capek's church was. At the time, it was the largest Unitarian church in the world. I think we can show the next slide, a beautiful picture of Prague. Have any of you been to Prague? I've only been there very briefly, but it's a beautiful, beautiful city. And then the next slide, this is the entrance to the Unitarian, what was Capek's Unitarian church. As I said, it was an enormous auditorium. In fact, if any of you remember the movie Amadeus about Mozart, there were some scenes that were filmed inside of the theater, the auditorium where this church met, the large congregation that gathered. So Capek, for some time when he was the minister, had felt the need for a symbolic ritual that would bind people in this very diverse congregation, many of them former Catholics, some had been raised Jewish, others without religion, some, it was a very diverse, we might say theologically diverse congregation. And he was trying to find a format that wouldn't alienate any of those folks who had forsaken other religious traditions, but would be a symbol of their own unity and community. So he turned to the native, natural beauty of the Bohemian countryside for the elements of the communion, which would be genuine for them. So this simple service was the result, and it was such a success that it was held each year just before the summer recess of the church. And yes, they did recess for the summer. And the flower communion was brought to the United States in 1940 and introduced to the members of the First Parish Unitarian Church in Cambridge, Massachusetts, by Dr. Capek's wife, Maya Capek, shown on the left here. And Maya was born in Czechoslovakia, but she met Norbert in New York City where he had been studying for his PhD at Columbia University, and she had received earlier a degree in library science. So she was working as a librarian in New York City. They met and fell in love, and it was at her urging, and Maya's urging, that Norbert left his Baptist ministry and turned to Unitarianism. So they both returned together in 1921 to Czechoslovakia and established this dynamic liberal church in Prague. And Maya Capek was herself ordained in 1926. Now, later, a decade or a bit longer than later, Maya came to the United States when the Nazis had occupied Czechoslovakia. She came to the United States to raise money for relief, and unfortunately, she was not able to return due to the outbreak of the full-scale war in 1939. And it was not until after the war that Norbert Capek's death in a concentration camp was revealed. When the Nazis took control of Prague, they found Dr. Capek's gospel of the inherent worth and beauty of every human person to be, as Nazi court records show, and here I quote, too dangerous to the Reich for him to be allowed to live. He was sent to Dachau, where he was killed in 1942 during a Nazi medical experiment. I think there's a slide. This is the entrance to Dachau. Earlier in that year, before he had been arrested, he wrote to his congregation, "We all know that this is the worst winter in our history, and the ground is terribly frozen. We also know that the spring must come, and the seeds now buried will sprout and bloom again." While he was, and that you can even recognize in that the coded language. In other words, the Nazi censors were already there, sitting in the back pew, probably taking notes. So what he said was very carefully worded, but it didn't stop him being arrested. And while he was in Dachau, he wrote numerous hymns, including one we'll hear later, and poems and prayers. And I just want to share one of the meditations that he wrote while he was interned at Dachau. "In the depths of my soul, there where lies the source of my strength, where the divine and the human meet, there, quiet your mind, quiet, quiet. Outside, let lightning rain, horrible darkness frighten the world, but from the depths of your own soul, from that silence will rise again God's flower. Return to yourself, rest in yourself, live in the depths of your soul, where the divine and the human meet. Tune your heart to the eternal, and in the depths of your own soul, your panting quiets down, where the divine and the human meet. There is your refuge." So this gentleman suffered a cruel death, but his message of hope and decency lives on through the flower communion, which is widely celebrated among UU congregations today. It's a noble and simple but meaning-filled ritual that we're about to recreate. And this service will include the original prayers of Dr. Capek to help us remember the principles and dreams for which he died. So before we begin, I want to share one more of those prayers, or a statement by Capek. "The giving and sharing of one flower is a powerful message of love. The gardens of the world are full of many flowers, each different, each beautiful, each unique. May this flower remind us all the peoples of the world are like those flowers. No two flowers are alike, so no two people are alike, yet each has a contribution to make. Together, the different flowers form a beautiful bouquet. Our common bouquet would not be the same without the unique addition of each individual flower. And thus it is with our congregation and our world community. By exchanging flowers, we show our willingness to walk together in the search for justice, peace, and love, disregarding all that might divide us. Each person takes home a flower brought by someone else, thus symbolizing our shared celebration in community."